Hello and welcome to everyone. My name is Christopher Andres. I'm going to be delivering a presentation on the European Union and United Nations roles in international crisis management, very specifically in the context of the Lisbon Treaty and beyond. The complexity of current security threats requires that the United Nations work much more closely with the European Union as a key international organization through improved cooperation and partnerships in several areas such as conflict prevention, crisis management, peacekeeping, peace building, etc. In a quite recent UN Security Council meeting on the role of international organizations and sub-regional arrangements held on March of this year, the UN Secretary General held that the United Nations was unable to tackle current security threats on its own. In other words, the United Nations needs the support of the European Union. The importance of the role of regional organizations was reaffirmed at the UN General Assembly high-level thematic debate on strengthening cooperation between the United Nations and international organizations held on May of this year. The object of this debate was to address questions such as how to strengthen United Nations partnerships with international organizations and the need to improve regional capacities in the area of peace and security much more effectively. My presentation is going to be structured in 5 main sectors. Critical steps in the development of the UN and European Union cooperation. The second one will be European Union common foreign and security policy after the Lisbon Treaty. Third one, political appraisals of European Union contributions and actions. The fourth, the European Union at the United Nations. Why is this specific forum of particular relevance? And at the end we are going to be making some conclusions, some lessons learned, some reflections. Let's start with the critical steps in the development of the United Nations and the European Union cooperation. The European Union embraces cooperation with the United Nations and reinforcing cooperation between the United Nations and regional organizations in line with its midterm priorities for the United Nations and as one of the priorities of the United Nations General Assembly, which was celebrated last year in 2014, referring to the 69th session. Now, for decades, the European Union has sought to advance a common voice of its members on matters of foreign affairs. For the most part, however, this endeavor has been impeded because of the absence of European Union organs and mechanisms assigned with the task to actually work towards such a goal. Let's see what the Lisbon Treaty represents in this context. The Lisbon Treaty definitely represents a breakthrough in this regard, because it calls for the appointment of an European Union High Representative on Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. It also mandates the Council to establish an External Action Service, which is absolutely new. It endows the European Union with international legal personality, very, very relevant. It strengthens cooperation and builds partnership not only with third countries, but also with international, regional, and global organizations which share those principles. Specifically, I would say that the European Union shall promote multilateral solutions to common problems, in particular in the framework of the United Nations. Now, the Lisbon Treaty not only enables, but even, I would say, that obliges the European Union to engage with the United Nations much more deeply. The legal empowerment of the European Union as a multilateral actor has been rewarded in the United Nations context following the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty back in 2009. The European Union has obtained new rights to participate in the work and sessions of the UN General Assembly, as we mentioned before. The United Nations and European Union cooperation has been intensified much more significantly in the area of crisis management. If we take a look at sort of like a very short agenda, we see that back in 2003 we had our first formal commitments with the signing of a joint declaration, United Nations European Union cooperation in crisis management, specifically in the area of civilian and military crisis management, and very particularly in the Balkans and in Africa. In 2007, we have a joint statement. 2011, the United Nations has a liaison office for peace and security in Brussels to enhance its partnership with the European Union, NATO and other organizations in Brussels on peacekeeping, crisis management, political affairs, conflict and mediation. 1 year after that, the Council of the European Union adopted a plan of action very relevant to enhance European Union common security and defense policy, support to UN peacekeeping. This is called the European Union Action Plan. And last year, in July of last year, the value of European Union cooperation with regional organizations, above all the African Union, but also the European Union, was underscored in the United Nations Security Council resolution, the 2167 resolution. Now, currently there are several current crisis situations and quite a few European Union and United Nations missions being developed. For instance, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kosovo, Mali, Central African Republic, Somalia, Libya, Afghanistan, and the Israel-Palestinian territories. Now, both organizations are now seeking to strengthen their cooperation in light of these and previous experiences. The United Nations Secretary General recently appointed a high-level independent panel on peace operations, very specifically, that will address a broad range of issues facing peace cooperations, including partnerships with regional organizations, and I'm referring very specifically to the European Union. Now, let's see three main issues in the context of the action plan for this year, focusing on ways to better tackle practical problems faced in the context of parallel engagements between the European Union and United Nations. I'd like to highlight the stress is being placed on the European Union lack of military capacity in challenging environments where soft soldering is deemed insufficient. In this context, the European Union may act as a strategic enabler through the provision of rapid reaction forces such as the European Union battle groups, logistical assets or high-tech equipment, for instance. Now, the second would be how to overcome outdated and negative attitudes of the European Union militaries and political leaders towards UN peacekeeping in general. And the third, how to deal with the reality of different approaches, different approaches to rule of law, as well as justice and security sector reform activities. What is lacking here is a shared understanding of the meaning of these concepts and how to implement them in concrete settings. Let's see the European Union Common Foreign and Security Policy after the Lisbon Treaty. Back in 2009, once the Lisbon Treaty was implemented, I'd like to assess the principles, key actors and competences and tools and priorities. The European Union commitment to effective multilateralism with the United Nations and its core is a central element in its external action. Now, as a UN observer with enhanced status, the European Union delegation coordinates with its 28 member states to speak with one voice. The European Union also works closely with the United Nations Secretariat and its agencies, funds and programs partnering on a range of global issues and challenges. In the context of the principles, the Treaty of European Union, the Union is founded on values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law and respect for human rights, including the rights of people belonging to minorities. These values are common to the 28 member states in a society in which pluralism, non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity and equality between men and women prevail. Keeping with the principles, in its relations with the wider world, the Union shall uphold and promote its values and interests and contribute to the protection of its citizens. I'd like to mention that it shall contribute to peace and security, the sustainable development of the earth, solidarity, the mutual respect among peoples, free and fair trade, etc. Now, and the development of international law, including respect for those principles of the UN Charter. In this slide, we can see the Article 21.1, and again, we'll go to the respect for the principles of the UN Charter and international law. Now, in terms of principles, what makes it different? What makes different the CFSP? The Common Foreign and Security Policy is subject to specific rules and procedures. It shall be defined and implemented by European Council and the Council. Those are, both of them are two different members, the European Council and the Council. We must not mistake them. Acting unanimously except where the treaties provide otherwise. The Court of Justice of the European Union shall not have jurisdiction with respect to these provisions. Let's see the key actors. We have 6+1 key actors: the European Council, the Council on Foreign Affairs, the Foreign Affairs Council, the High Representative, Vice President, the Commission, the Parliament, the 20 member states, and the European External Action Service. All right. The European Council, it identifies the Union's strategic interests and objectives. The President of the European Council, by the way, shall, at his level and in that capacity, ensure the external representation of the Union on issues concerning its common foreign and security policy. The Council frames the CFSP and takes decisions necessary for defining and implementing it. What about the Commission? The Commission, with the exception of CFSP, shall ensure the Union's external representation. It is responsible for external actions, including trade, development aid, humanitarian assistance, enlargement, neighborhood policy, etc. The Parliament, now, is consulted and may address questions or make recommendations to the Council or the High Representative, and the High Representative shall ensure that the views of the European Parliament are duly taken into consideration. The High Representative and Vice President. The High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and the Vice President of the Commission, who shall chair the Foreign Affairs Council, shall contribute through his proposals to the development of the common foreign and security policy, and shall ensure implementation of the decisions adopted by the European Council and the Council, both of them. Now, the High Representative shall represent the Union for matters relating to the common foreign and security policy. She shall conduct political dialogue with third parties on the Union's behalf and shall express the Union's position in international organizations and at international conferences. Currently, the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the Commission is Federica Mogherini. Now, let's see the 28 member states. They implement the CFSP together with the High Representative and the Vice President. The member states shall support the Union's external and security policy actively and in a spirit of loyal and mutual solidarity, and shall comply with the Union's action in this area. The member states also shall work together to enhance and develop their mutual political solidarity, and they shall refrain from any action which is contrary to the interests of the Union or likely to impair its effectiveness as a cohesive force in international relations. Okay, in fulfilling his mandate, the High Representative shall be assisted by the European External Action Services. This service shall work in cooperation with the diplomatic service of each one of the member states and shall comprise officials from relevant departments of General Secretariat of the Council and of the Commission, as well as staff seconded by national diplomatic services of the 28 member states. Okay, following this, the European External Action Services, they have autonomy, they are a fully autonomous body of the European Union. They are under the authority of the HRVP and made up of central administration and of European Union delegations to third countries and international organizations. Okay. Now, supports this service. The European External Action Service supports the High Representative and the Vice President in 3 capacities that we have listed here. Also assists the President of the European Council, the President of the Commission and the Commission, and shall support and work in cooperation with the diplomatic services of the Member States, as we have mentioned before, as well as with the General Secretariat of the Council and services of the Commission. Now, let's see the key new developments after the Lisbon Treaty, the new agenda. I would like to mention the integral coherence between the CFSP and external action, the comprehensive approach which makes the European Union uniquely able to tackle all aspects of a foreign policy issue, which is almost impossible to be done by the United Nations itself. In terms of the presidency functions, we see the Foreign Affairs Council, the Political and Security Committee, working groups, local coordination, etc. And speaking with one voice is crucial here in terms of statements, the marches, international organizations, etc. Now, furthermore, the neighborhood, where the European Union has all of the policies and instruments and at its disposal to effect lasting change, and those international issues where only the European Union's collective weight allow us to play a leading role in today's globalized world. So we see, in terms of the CFSP after the Lisbon Treaty, 3 main improvements. A much more ambitious agenda, a more coherent decision-making process, and a much better and more integrated tools. Sector number 3 of this presentation will see the political appraisals of the European Union contributions and actions. First of all, let's take a look at some successful stories. In the area of peace and security, we see the European Union's achievements as an international negotiator, reaching an agreement, for instance, in November 2013 on a joint plan of action on Iran's nuclear program. Also, the European Union facilitating dialogue between Serbia and Kosovo. There was another agreement and the normalization of relations between the 2 parties in April of 2013. A comprehensive approach to the maintenance of peace and security and its role, the role of the European Union in combating piracy off the Somali coast, and the assistance to the Central African Republic through humanitarian aid. But not only humanitarian aid, also there was some very relevant financial contribution and temporary operation to assist the African-led international support mission to the Central African Republic, what is called MISCA. Keeping with the successful stories, we see the European Union's initiative to provide humanitarian assistance to the affected people in Syria and neighboring countries, and there was timely in-kind support for the rapid establishment of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, and also this was established along with the United Nations Joint Mission for the Elimination of Chemical Weapons program of the Syrian Arab Republic. We see the Middle East peace progress, the European Union's diplomatic efforts in Libya, and the significance of the United Nations European Union partnership in the management of crisis situations. Again, the management of crisis situations, such as in Somalia, Mali, and the Central African Republic. Actually, Ban Ki-moon has recently emphasized the European Union's support for mediation, including throughout the funding of the United Nations and by a team of mediation experts. The European Union has a very excellent team of mediation experts currently. in terms of European Union cooperation with the United Nations, there is a very intense work in progress. The United Nations Security Council members expressed concerns about the European Union's aspiration to act in a more autonomous manner on matters of security and peace. China expressed its hope that the European Union would abide by the principles of the UN Charter, particularly as regards respect for the sovereign equality of states and the peaceful settlements of disputes. Now, Russia conveyed its positive stance on the European Union's engagement in crisis situation, but also stressed that in implementing its crisis management operations, the European Union and its member states should always go strictly by the relevant decisions of the Security Council. In this context, Russia referred specifically to the European Union facilitating dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina, noting that despite the growing demand for an effective mechanism for organizing a division of labor between the United Nations and regional associations, including the European Union, the leading role of the Security Council in issues related to the maintenance of international peace and security is unshakable. Now, finally, Russia expressed misgivings about some doubts here and there about the European Union's advisory mission to Ukraine. We have a long way to walk in this respect, in this mission to Ukraine. Now, in terms of the European Union cooperation with the United Nations and the work in progress, we have mentioned the return of the Cold War politics in international relations, raising an awareness of the European Union's ambitions and interests that come into tension with an ever closer UN cooperation. The European Union restricted measures imposed on Russia and the Syrian leaders in the absence of the United Nations Security Council's authorization, in a case in point. It's definitely a very important case in point. To this should be added that the European Union is in the process of aligning itself with NATO. This move is not surprising considering the changing security situation in Europe, especially ever since everything that happened back in January of this year. The European Union's ambition to advance a common defense policy, and the majority of the UN members are also part of NATO, concretely 22. Now, nevertheless, this process could be perceived negatively by the United Nations Security Council's members that are not part of NATO. The European Union and NATO share objectives, that's for sure. Now, such as fighting against terrorism and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. According to NATO's new state concept, which is a work in progress right now, adopted at the Lisbon Summit back in 2010, all the common areas are energy security issues and cyber defense. At that summit, NATO's Secretary General stressed the importance of European Union-NATO cooperation in the light of new threats and challenges emanating from the East, very specifically as a consequence of the behavior of a more assertive Russia, responsible for aggression actions in Ukraine, and from the South, in the Middle East and North Africa, through the turmoil, barbaric violence and terrorism activities close to our borders. So all of this is definitely changing all of the security and defense agenda. Now, in the sector number 4, the European Union at the United Nations, what is this forum of particular relevance? The European Union at the United Nations, we are going to be assessing the European Union in action, strategic governance, and the priorities, the European Union priorities for the UN General Assembly, the upcoming UN General Assembly in September of this year, the 17th General Assembly. European Union in action in terms of strategic governance, let's see, shared values and goals, partnerships, and speaking with one voice, which we've been mentioning before, share values and goals. The Union shall promote multilateral solutions to common problems, in particular in the framework of United Nations. This is expressed in Article 2021. In this new slide, we have a chart with a comparison between European Union and United Nations on shared values and goals in accordance with the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, with the principles of the Helsinki Final Act, and with the aims of the Charter of Paris, including those related to external borders. We have highlighted some shared values and goals in blue, such as fundamental interests, security, independence and integrity, human rights and the principles of international law, preserve peace, prevent conflicts, strengthen international security, stronger multilateral cooperation and good global governance, maintenance of international peace and security, equal rights and self-determination of people, strengthen universal peace, etc. In terms of partnership, the European Union and its 28 member states collectively are the single largest financial contributor to the UN system. 33% of the UN regular budget, over 36% of the UN peacekeeping budget, about one half of all the voluntary contributions to the UN funds and programs, and the European Commission alone contributed more than in US dollars 1.7 billion in support of the UN External Assistance Program and projects back in 2014. Now, keeping with the partnership, we have seen several specific agendas being very relevant, key agendas such as political affairs, peace and security, peacekeeping, peace building, development, humanitarian affairs, and human rights. In this presentation, let's keep focus on political affairs, peace and security, and peacekeeping and peace building. Speaking with one voice, we have mentioned before, the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy shall express the Union's position in international organizations and international conferences. Now, the European integration means shared values, shared interests, and shared goals. Even individual priorities can be leveraged in a truly global approach. And in this case, size matters. We have 28 member states, 500 million people, 17 trillion US dollars GDP. Keeping with, speaking with one voice, at this moment we have 6 candidate countries, 1 potential candidate, which is Bosnia and Herzegovina, 3 European Free Trade Association countries, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland, 5 Eastern Partnership countries, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Moldova and Ukraine, 3 European microstates, Andorra, Monaco and San Marino, and an important block of potentially 48 countries, almost a fourth of the UN membership, and possible like-minded. In this case, we're referring to the JustConf group, which is a consultative body to the UN Human Rights Council. Now, also, in terms of the UN priorities for the UN General Assembly, this upcoming assembly, the 17th General Assembly, we are recognizing the importance of the United Nations at the core of effective multilateralism for the European Union and its member states for the duration of the 17th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. We'll strongly focus on this, on the issues under the following headings: safer world, common future, and effective multilateralism. Let's go through them again. A safer world, a common future, and effective multilateralism. Effective multilateralism. Okay? Now, a safer world. Current threats and challenges to international peace and security also require a strong focus on the preventive approach so that early warning translates into prompt action. The European Union works to promote a culture of prevention, which is probably stronger than the culture of prevention at this moment in the United Nations within the UN system, including the Security Council, in order to improve its capacity to respond to emerging crises and potential threats to peace and security, paying close attention to risk factors and the deep-lying causes of conflicts. Peace and security-related reviews, non-proliferation of disarmament, and counter-terrorism. In terms of common future, this year, 2015, we must seize the opportunity to take important decisions that will shape the world of future generations. The European Union is committed to achieving a comprehensive post-2015 framework, strongly engaged on climate change and further strengthen the multilateral human rights framework. We could highlight the post-2015. In 2015 is a crucial year, this year, in order to put in place a truly integrated, sustainable global agenda, building upon the Millennium Development Goals and the Rio Vision. We could highlight that the European Union is strongly committed to achieving a transformative, very, very transformative new framework which integrates poverty eradication, sustainable development with peaceful and stable societies in its three dimensions, and also encompasses human rights, rule of law, good governance, gender equality, and environmental sustainability. We need an ambitious agenda which should be truly integrated and universal with all the countries and stakeholders playing their full part. Also, right after the post-2015, climate change, human rights and international law, protecting the humanitarian space, gender issues and cyber issues. Okay, after the common future, effective multilateralism. Now, the UN reform and increase efficiency from the UN perspective. We must rethink the governance and funding modalities to ensure the sound management of the UN financial resources and staff, including in the negotiations of the next UN regular budget and UN peacekeeping budgets. A comprehensive reform of the UN Security Council, as well as the revitalization of the work of the General Assembly, and enhancing public knowledge of the three UN pillars of work and European Union priorities related to them is also an utmost importance. Now, it's true, we must rethink the governance and funding modalities in the UN reform and increase efficiency, including the negotiations of the next UN regular budget and UN peacekeeping budgets, which is currently being developed right now, at this moment. In terms of effective multilateralism, we must also highlight the strengthening multilateral partnerships. The regional partners play a key role, notably the Arab League, the OSCE, the African Union, regional interlocutors in Latin America, the Caribbean and Asia. The UN Secretary Regional Report on Partnering for Peace and the New Paradigm of Partnership Peacekeeping in the Global Security Architecture. The European Union encourages the framework of established cooperation mechanisms such as the high-level European Union United Nations Steering Committee on Crisis Management, and also recalls the added value of common approaches between the European Union, the United Nations, and very specifically the African Union in Africa, and the interest in strong trilateral cooperation. Now, in one sentence, after what we've been mentioning, less than 6 years after the Lisbon Treaty, which was launched in December of 2009, Less than 5 years after launch of the European External Action Service, which was December of 2010, 4 years and a half after the European Union achieved enhanced status at the UN General Assembly, May of 2011, it is not viable to even imagine the European Union without the single coordinated European Union voice projected by a European Union delegation. Okay, we're in the moment where I'd like to make some conclusions, some reflections and some lessons learned after my presentation. The first one that I'd like to highlight is the need to find a more effective global security governance. The promotion of global security governance model in which international and regional organizations such as the European Union are given a critical role while it seeks to provide more effective global responses and management of crisis situations. The current efforts to strengthen cooperation between the United Nations and regional organizations are guided by this primary objective. Key questions should focus on how to best cooperate and who should be responsible for what in different situations. In a globalized New Westphalian and increasingly multipolar world, the European Union and the 28 member states need and will increasingly need an effective and more ambitious common foreign and security policy agenda to preserve their role in the world and to maintain the European Union as a force for the good in that world. The second reflection would be, when it comes to the area of peace and security, our primary concern is the degree of autonomy of international and regional organizations to act on their own beyond the realm of dispute settlement envisioned in the UN Charter. The European Union's responses in crisis situations, not supported by the United Nations Security Council mandates, have evoked negative reactions by members, especially in the last couple of years or so. In this light, the question arises as to whether the return of Cold War politics, and we are progressively returning to it, and the changing security situation in Europe may place strains on the current agenda to strengthen United Nations European Union cooperation in the maintenance of peace and security. The third reflection that I'd like to make is to the common foreign and security policy architecture is going to continue to evolve to better respond to the evolving needs. Now, all of the efforts in European integration, it will be a trial and error exercise. By this I mean that not all of the actions, not all of the strategies will be successful. We are going to be facing a lot of challenges, a lot of opposition and a lot of resistance probably inside and outside Europe. In the context of the legal framework established in the United Nations Charter, not much guidance is provided. Instead, the relevance of organizing principles such as competitive advantages, complementarity and burden sharing that have been introduced to improve effectiveness in international aid is right now under consideration. The fourth reflection would be, so far, there is no agreed understanding of the practical principles in the context of UN cooperation with international regional organizations in the area of security and peace. This raises questions that still remain ahead also. As in the past, our European enterprise will only succeed in so much as it will be able to prove that we can deliver goods within the European level, goods that cannot be delivered at any other level. And the fifth reflection that I like to make is the multitude of crisis situations already faced by United Nations Security Council in need of more effective governance, including funding and military assistance, speak much in favor of continued reinforcement of cooperation between the United Nations and regional organizations, especially the European Union, in the years to come. Above all, the development of the common foreign and security policy, as the progress of the European integration overall, will depend on the critical aim by Europeans, by each one of us, to continue building a stronger, better, and much more integrated continent. Thank you so much.